Ladies and gentlemen, colleagues and friends, welcome to the webinar on spotlighting women leadership in responding to COVID-19 in the Global South. We're very honored to have a distinguished panel today to discuss this very important issue. I'm Grace Wang, Deputy Director of UN Office for South-South Cooperation. Very delighted to be your moderator today. Before we formally start the agenda, let me just announce a couple of housekeeping points. This webinar will be recorded and shared on the South-South Galaxy platform and other platforms of our partners and also the UN Office for South-South Cooperation website. In order to manage time and smooth flow, we will not take live questions directly from the participants, but we encourage all participants to make use of the chat function to share comments, questions, and engage with the panelists. I will be able to share your questions with the panelists during the question and answer session. Colleagues, to date, COVID-19 has unfortunately spread so fast to more than 200 countries and territories around the world. The disease is not only about a health crisis. It not only overwhelms our health sectors, but also poses unprecedented challenges in the form of financial crisis, economic issues, unemployment, food insecurity, education, you name it, many challenges that risk bringing people back to poverty and erasing some of the hard-earned social economic progress we have gained in our journey towards achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. As with many other crises, we know women and girls are most vulnerable during such challenging times. Nearly 60% of women around the world work in the informal economy, earning less, saving less, and at greater risk of falling into poverty due to the lockdown unemployment. Women provide 75% of unpaid care, such as looking after children, the sick, the elderly. Women's unpaid care work has increased exponentially during the pandemic as a result of school closures and other necessary and increased needs of the elderly, the sick, the people who suffer from the disease. Perhaps most importantly, about 70% of global healthcare system is comprised by women, which put them in the front line as responders, but also exposed to higher risk of infection. Yet, women are still underrepresented in positions of power. That translates into policy making and strategic design, strategic planning of emergency response and recovery overwhelmingly dominated by men around the world, and we need to improve gender equality in policy making too. However, with all these challenges women and girls are facing, female leadership has also been brought to prominence by this crisis. Women are saving lives as first responders, finding and creating solutions, and rising to the challenge both at political and, level and as social innovators. So today, the United Nations Office for South-South Cooperation is organizing this webinar spotlighting women leadership in responding to COVID-19 in the Global South, to specifically highlight the achievement of women from the Global South in responding to this pandemic. 4 exceptional women leaders around the world will share with us today their own experiences and achievements, and also share with us today their insights for their recommendations for the South-South cooperation for how countries can work together to advance women's leadership and empower women and girls. Before we introduce the distinguished panel, Let me first have the honor to invite Mr. Jorge Chediak, Director of UN Office for South-South Cooperation and Envoy of the UN Secretary General on South-South Cooperation, to provide opening remarks. Mr. Chediak, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Grace. First, let me start by thanking the panelists, great leaders from the South, to share their experiences today with us. And this event is part of a series of webinars our office is organizing either by itself or jointly with other organizations to review how the challenge that the COVID pandemic is making to the world can also be responded with, which are the good practices that are being developed and how those good practices could be shared through South-South cooperation. And we determined that the issue of the gender dimension of the pandemic was very important. So I commend Grace and Shams in my team for putting this event together. Because as we all know, and as Grace advanced in her opening remarks, the epidemic affects people differently. And women, because of the nature of unpaid labor, the nature of the fact that they are caregivers, the fact that they are also the backbone of the health system, tend to be more severely affected in the context of the pandemic. And in the global situation, this will be the first year in over 30 years that the global human development of the world will go down, since these statistics are kept up by UNDP in the context of the preparation of the Human Development Report. So what is the great challenge we have regarding the genderization of the response to COVID? We have to find the best practices by which the effects on the progress women are making or have to make can be minimized, and also take this crisis as an opportunity to put together best practices for enhancing the progress afterwards. The situation, as we know, is very dire, as Grace pointed out. The fact that the tens of millions of girls have not gone to school for almost a year or are not going to school for almost a year has tremendous effects. And we have to make sure they go back and they catch up and they take advantage of these possibilities. The informal employment, which is one that is also performed by women, has been severely affected because of the lockdowns and because of the social distancing measures being implemented. So what we look forward from in this particular event is great hearing from great leaders in the South, great gender leaders committed to the cause of the progress of equality, to tell us what they're doing and suggest what can be done. And the next step is for our office, through our platforms, to allow you to share these experiences so we can make sure that the best practices that will ensure the progress of women is maintained, consolidated, and advanced is known to the world. So really, I want to thank you again, and we really look forward to hearing what you have to say and what we have to share. And institutionally, our office will be fully committed to supporting the efforts of sharing within the Global South how to minimize the effects of the crisis and also how to make this crisis an opportunity to advance gender equality along the world. Thank you very much for your participation. Look forward to hearing your conclusions and to, more importantly, make sure that what is being done is replicated throughout the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Shadiak, for your opening remarks for the distinguished panel. In the panel, we will have 4 speakers today. They will share their experiences in supporting their countries and communities in addressing the impact of COVID-19, and also with the focus on why and how to place women's needs and leadership at the heart of the effective response. Also, we would like to hear from them the role of South-South and triangular cooperation, how it can advance women's voice and decision-making in COVID-19 preparedness, response, and recovery. We have about 8 to 10 minutes for each panelist, and then there might be a reminder when you reach 8 minutes. I would like to introduce now, with honor, our first speaker, Her Excellency Mrs. Maria de Pilar Gonzalo Garrido, Minister of National Planning and Economic Policy of the Republic of Costa Rica. You are welcome. And Her Excellency recently held the position of Vice Minister of National Planning for the Salis Rivera administration during the period 2016 to 2018, and served as a consultant for the United Nations system and the Barcelona Provincial Council on issues of local human development planning and population and development with vulnerable populations. I'm sure your insights will be very valuable to our discussion. The floor is yours, Your Excellency, Mrs. Maria.
Thank you very much for the possibility to be here with you this morning. In our case, we're going to start sharing some of the things that we have been doing in order to better respond and address the impacts of COVID-19. Some of the actions that we have put into place range from cash transfers, support of cash transfers for those individuals who have lost their jobs or who have been facing reduction of their working hours as a consequence of COVID-19. In that program, our program is called Proteger, which in English will stand for protect. And in the criteria, in the selection criteria, on the highest level rank women in order to protect women first, because most of our women are also the head of our households, and particularly those women who are in vulnerable situations. Something else that we have been doing is to freeze temporarily fuel prices in order to generate non-deficitary sources of income, in order not to stress even more our public finances. So we froze temporarily the price of fuels and the differential between what it should have been and the price that has been frozen. We have taken that money in order to inject more resources to the Proteger program in order to have more money to destine to our women and our working force who has been facing problems, and also destined to informal workers who are also part of this program. Something else that we have been doing is to defer selective public utility payments, particularly water and electricity, so that we actually protect and alleviate the cash flow of households and enterprises, particularly those SMEs. We also established a moratorium on the payment of value-added tax, income tax, and custom duties for all formally constituted companies. And we reduced 75% of the contribution of base wage from our social security, and the government actually injects those resources directly to our social protection and social security institution. Something else that we have been doing is to add flexibility of prudential regulation to the payment of credit, so that we relax our prudential regulations, particularly to have those readjustment and grace periods of 2 years, and also to establish different estimates for counter-cyclical estimates, and to apply those to the public and private sectors in order to decrease interest rates, and also to help people with their cash flow and translate those payments into more longer period payments without any extraordinary payment penalties. So this is something we have been doing in order to alleviate also cash flows and to prevent people from losing their houses or their enterprises as well. Something else that we have been doing is to promote conditions to improve liquidity in the financial system, creating those ways and instruments in which we could have guarantees in order for people to reduce the risk, for people to have access to credit and to reduce the risk for the financial sector. And also in that criteria, prioritize SMEs, which are, in our case, mostly headed by women. Also, we have been working at the same time that we're facing this response to COVID. We're also working on something else, which is the recovery phase. We have this long-term strategy, 2050 strategy, development strategy, which also links to this kind of recovery, which is very much focused on social inclusion and taking advantage of our gender bonus, and also thinking about decarbonization and better adaptation and mitigation to climate change, building up on resilience in our economy. So in order to habilitate that and to make it accelerate some of the reforms in that area, we have been working as well in a program which is called Alivio, which would stand for Alleviate. And this program, the idea behind it is to actually, for those enterprises who have the potential to export and who have that potential to change and find this very unique space into the new global accumulation chains of our commerce, international commerce, in those in which we have a competitive advantage as a country. So start a program in which we can actually inject resources to SMEs that have the potential to export or who are already exporters, and to work with them very close one-on-one technical assistance for them to build on capacity and to transform the way they're actually working so that they can compete better and have better access to global markets in which those which will hold a competitive advantage, such as medical instruments or something that we're trying to build, which is a sanitation hub and medical sciences hub. So this is something we're actually doing, and we're also working on injecting work capital and reinvestment capital to those SMEs, which I repeat, the most of our SMEs are headed by women, and to enable access to the most affected companies, particularly tourism, which accounts for nearly 10% of our total GDP, and the complete chain of tourism, value chain of tourism has been severely affected, as you may already know. Something else that we're working has to do with public investment and how to build up and accelerate on very short-term works that can actually generate employment, and low qualification and low productivity employment, which is directed to those who are most vulnerable. And so we have this road of infrastructure and public transportation, which accounts for nearly 1.9 billion. And in those, we have also one of our key pieces of infrastructure, which be an electric train, so that it can actually work on both dimensions, inclusion and also decarbonization at the same time, in new sources of employment and more balance in our lives. So this is something we're also working and injecting more of new ways in which our SMEs can actually adapt better to the new normal, to new COVID conditions, and inject also the possibility to have digital connections and also e-commerce, which we're also heading a little behind, so that we can actually build upon that. Something else that we believe that we are working on is that we're analyzing how COVID has a differentiated impact on each population. And in our case, women case, we know that we have extra, that COVID hasn't been easy to live with, especially when we're thinking about confinement. We have a lot more of duties and workload at home, and taking care of people and taking care of elderly. So it's been tough work. And so we're also trying to think about ways in which we can compensate those extra hours and try to build upon, from the state and the private sector, more equilibrium into the whole care economy. And something else that we're also working on is how to take advantage of our women bonus, because our population is growing old, and we're undergoing this transition period in which our demographic pyramid is going to be turning around, and it's going to be very, very much difficult for us. So in those terms, we're taking advantage of gender bonus, generating possibilities in which we could actually have more opportunities and becoming being self-employed in good terms, in formal terms, or having more access to actually being able to incorporate ourselves in formal markets, of labor markets. And in that second task, it's a lot of being devoted, some of our work has been devoted to making it happen in terms of technical assistance, in terms of training, in terms of thinking about other ways in which we can actually make our capacities even go further. And something else that we're actually working on, and that we believe that this is very important for ourselves, is how to establish and how to take advantage of care services and as a triple opportunity, and how to take advantage of fostering those training areas I was just mentioning into STEM, science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics, which we're actually working harder on. And the other thing we envisage is that the role of South-South and triangular cooperation is key. Learning about other people's mistakes, other countries' mistakes, learning about what has been working well, and creating this community of best practices, and sharing ourselves, and thinking about this as an opportunity to bring ourselves together and to help us in the long run recover better. So what we believe is that being a country that is just recently going to join the OECD, and thinking about ourselves as a high middle income country, we do have some structural challenges that we still have to face, but also we have a lot of ourselves to offer. So we have just catalogs of international cooperation, and we are working on best practices of being how we have been addressing also COVID-19 as a way in which we can put ourselves in and share our best practices with others. And also thinking about one of our catalogs has to do with population and development, assistance of domestic violence victims, which has been also raising as a result of confinement measures and all, and thinking about how gender equality and equity can actually move ahead and accelerate in this period. We also believe that we do have in the South structural inequalities, but we also believe that as a community we can work together, generating public goods and services. And we also believe, as His Excellency Antonio Guterres said, that no country can do it alone. And particularly us, countries from the South, we have this responsibility about thinking and being a laboratory of good practices, and thinking, being very, very creative, since our resources are limited, on ways in which we can cooperate better and do things that we haven't ever done before. So COVID has this way to accelerate and to bring us together in ways that we didn't have before. This is one of an example. This is where we are today, an example of how to bring us together even more. And we believe that with a very clear South-South cooperation agenda for the response for COVID, how we can help each other out as we have been implementing measures, but also how we have been paying the floor for what is the recovery and a better recovery in which human rights and us women can stand up and continue to contribute in the process of building up on societies that are even more inclusive, more resilient, and more prosperous. And this is, I believe, we're as South-South countries, we have been posed with the question, and we have the responsibility to do it better and to become even closer in terms of responses. I do believe that recovery, some of the most structural questions, some of the very heartfelt questions that we have been facing today is shared between many nations. So I do believe that in terms of on how to alleviate and how to prevent scars in our economic tissue and after this pandemics is key for us, and together we can do it better. So I think that for now this will be it for me, and we also have a very clear roadmap on how we can build up on South-South cooperation. We have SDGs, we have a 2030 agenda, we have the Paris Agreement, we have all these instruments that we share in terms of human development and human rights. So from that agenda, we can actually build better together and try to accelerate together reforms that can actually lead us to this better recovery. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. I think Mrs. Maria, you have really provided us very concrete examples from your country how to address the issues, not only short term during the pandemic with all the financial tools and with the flexible regulations, but also pay attention to like how those experiment can translate into long-term social transformation. The areas you mentioned, such as supporting SMEs and renovating public transportation, digital connection, training for entrepreneurship, the benefit will last long. And indeed, such a long-term planning approach is very much needed. And that will help us to address the structural issues in the long term, beyond the COVID. Yeah, thank you very much. And I heard clearly from you how South-South cooperation can help. And I will, take those points into the summary. Thank you very much, Ms. Maria. Now let us move on to the second speaker. I have the honor to introduce Her Excellency Dr. Elizabeth Akui-Yor, Minister of Health of South Sudan. Before taking on this role, Her Excellency served as the Deputy Minister of Gender and Social Welfare in 2016. And she has also, very specially, had frontline practical experiences as nurse in her earlier professional life, with first-hand experience and insight to inform policy making and also inform the understanding of gender issues. So Dr. Elizabeth, the floor is yours.
Okay. Hello there, thank you so much. Actually, I'm not going to talk a lot, but before I appreciate what the UN is doing for the South Sudan, as we all know, South Sudan is a very vulnerable country. South Sudan has been in the many years conflicts, the war. So South Sudan actually hasn't got a very good system for everything in terms of health and even in terms of education for girls and overall. And also in terms of working, there is nothing like that in South Sudan. So we just came out from the conflict. And now we are on the process of the peace. You might heard or you read it about the peace of South Sudan. And before we even complete, now is the COVID-19 problem. So South Sudan really, is the country really crying for everything. Really, it cannot be compared like other country. Everything is needed to be done. And also that one, we cannot do it alone. As I mentioned earlier, we've been in too many decades of war around us. Now, as I said earlier on, I'm not going to talk a lot. For me, it's just appreciation. So I'm here to appreciate the UN team for their support for people of South Sudan under the current difficult time. In top of that also, I would like to thank UN team for supporting issues of the women health and gender equality in the public of South Sudan. Now, during this coronavirus pandemic, South Sudan needs support of UN more than ever any time of the history of the UN in this country. The women, as I said earlier on, and especially the women of South Sudan are so vulnerable in terms what I said earlier on due to the war. The majority of women of South Sudan are widows with children, and there is no work. And economic also is broken down, there is nothing. So it's really, really very difficult for the South Sudan women to support themselves. Top of that, also we have a lot of young girls, orphans, without no one can take care of them. Some of them, they were doing these small businesses, for example, making the tea on the street. But due to the lockdown of coronavirus, it's become a problem now. the movement is not there, and also the income is really zero. And top of that also, this one is causing a lot of what they call violence to the girls. The girls' school has been closed, so at home there is no support. So the young girl now are become vulnerable out there in terms of rapes, and some of them even going there for them to support themselves to do some this and professional work to get the income for their own. Sometimes even you can find the 16 years old or even below that, you could to be a carry for all house without working. Sometimes they can do this kind of things, and it's very rich for the women of South Sudan. So as I said earlier on, for me, as a woman myself, and the Minister for Health, I really appreciate and appeal to the UN, United Nations Office for South Sudan to cooperate for the cooperation to put the issue of women and gender equality top of its agenda during this chronic virus. They really, as I said earlier on, we are really very vulnerable. And even now, we don't know, as the world know, when this chronic virus is going to end, no one knows. But the way the South Sudan is going, the situation is going, it's not safe yet. And also it's not even about the coronavirus we are dealing. We are even, people of South Sudan, they are really suffering from other diseases, especially now we are in the raining season, and we are approaching the flooding season. So the malaria and a lot of diseases are around us, and we are not even able to treat them or to buy the medication. On top of that also, because as I said earlier on, due to the suffering conflict in South Sudan, the government is even not able to put the good health system for the people of South Sudan, nor will be able to buy such things like medication, the simple medication, even paracetamol. Sometimes the government cannot able to give it to the people of South Sudan. So to be honest, I'm a woman, and the way I can see my sisters, I can see the women, they are really suffering, as I said. So therefore, the women of South Sudan are really depending so long for United Nations support. And this is the support really, I really apply for the people, and the good people out there. Please do not forget the women of South Sudan. We are really depending on outside there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Elizabeth, to bring us to the hard reality. Yes, indeed, each country has a different situation and needs very tailored solution and support that really address the demands of the people in the country. So we have heard the huge challenges, and we have heard that no country can do it alone, that you appreciated UN working together with you as the office promoting South-South cooperation. This is also an opportunity for the world to hear the actual specific demands from the country, and hopefully based on solidarity, we can see more Southern partners joining you too to work to mutually support. And also, you have highlighted the issue of women in peace building and sustaining peace, which is a critical issue for the country and for the world. Gender-based violence has been, more serious during this crisis as well. Those dimensions are very important and challenging. And thank you very much for letting us, understand the reality and tailor our ideas and thoughts to better work together in this situation. Thank you very much. Now I have the pleasure to introduce our next speaker, Dr. Sawa Pak Hingjoy, Director of Office of International Cooperation at Department of Disease Control, Ministry of Public Health of Thailand. Dr. Hingjoy engaged in developing collaborations in public health research in various platforms of national, regional, and global agenda. And we would love to hear from you, Dr. Hingjoy, and the floor is yours. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Excellency, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, you just introduced me about my background is a veterinarian, but the veterinarian that work at in the Ministry of Public Health. Before I moved to the Office of International Cooperation, I have ever worked at in the Division of Epidemiology at in the Ministry of Public Health since 2000. One of my favorite jobs is investigation at the community level. Since the outbreak of SARS, avian influenza, swine influenza, Zika, and MERS, so my sharing experiences in an issue of power of women during the COVID-19 pandemic will be mixed between what's happening in the community and the national level. To give an example of power of women is greater than it used to be. The image of women from the past has changed a lot. An image of women always stood to a housewife to take care of her family. Now the woman become a person who can move or receive. That it does not in the country, but it is also global level. The above images are continuously developing and much clearer in this crisis situation. For example, 100 years ago, during the influenza epidemic, a main job of women was just nurse, who looking after patients or helper to work behind the scenes. Today, women can be many things, including frontline workers, such as military, executive, policy makers, epidemiologists, scientists, and supporting roles of other people as well. The example demonstrates how we accept person's ability more than their genders. We accept the image of diversity rather than looking at power based on masculinity or the femininity. For a key example, on the global level, one event is standing out. The Prime Minister of New Zealand, Jacinda Ardern, talked to people in the country via live channel after sending her daughter going to bed. She acts as a mother who cares for her family and manages the duty as the country leader to look after her own people. Three main important aspects that we can see from her, including direction giving, meaning making, and empathy. Over the past 6 months, Thailand has to confront the situation of the epidemic of COVID-19. In the Ministry of Public Health, two main duties of women are to take care of their families and also the duty of work to look after the health of people with obligations of the Ministry of Public Health as the primary responsibility. From this picture, you can see that the investigation team, that in the most of women that we train how to correct the sample, how to investigate the people. That is the most of them are women. I would like to tell a true story in women's position in the disease investigation. Since the beginning of a local transmission of the outbreak in Thailand, this was occurred at the boxing stadium. This picture showing the Thai boxing stadium. You may wonder, the boxing stadium, that's the place, fill a lot of men, and how women could be the main successful factors of the disease investigation. I'm not talking about the role of the women in the epidemiologies, but they have in their some position that I would like to share with you. In the outbreak in the boxing stadium was the largest cluster of COVID-19 in Thailand. But to follow those boxers or visitors in the boxing stadium for the investigation and contact tracing was not easy at all. The difficulty of this case was all boxers use nicknames in the Boxing Society when they become sick and were admitted to the hospitals. The information received was the real name of those boxers. The investigation team could not match their real names and nicknames, so it was difficult for the investigation team to recognize who they were. The wives of those boxers are the key for the investigation team to overcome this mission. The investigation team talked with some wives of those boxers. The wives helped us to track all the nicknames of the boxers and bring the investigation team to meet the real boxers for interviewing their respecters. We have got collaboration from the wife of boxers. Finally, we began to interventions and conventions and controversies. This showed that many important pieces of the solved during the investigation. A lesson learned from this was reviewed that those wives were concerned about the health of their families. They don't want anyone in the family to not be sick or be infected. The attention and importance of the duties of mother or spouse are very powerful. If we could provide key information and create the health literacy in families by approach women in the families, we can establish strong community to prevent, detect, and respond in the health case. Okay, I would like to add more images of women in the communities. This image is a familiar picture of Thai people. We call them health volunteers. More than 80% of 1 million health volunteers were women. 80% are women. This is a huge group of people. Those women perform various jobs. We have to admit that working in community is not an easy task with a variety of cultures. Creating health literacy by adapting to each local context and making the villager to understand how to prevent COVID-19 infection and other health problems in the community are very challenging. With a great number of village health volunteers, with most of them being women, in every province of Thailand, this mechanism help to minimize local transmission, raise awareness of the people in the community, and encourage the people to comply by the disease control measures. If we say that doctor and nurse are the frontline warriors in this battle, the village health volunteer women is like the secret weapon of the warrior to knock down the enemy. I have already mentioned the overview of power of women in another country and also in the domestic examples. What if I'm not talking about in my organization? As the International Cooperation Task Force of the Department of Disease Control is diverse and has over 80% women, everyone has to work together. Everyone is fully engaged in their own work. We represent different offices, including my office of International Cooperation, Division of Communicable Disease, Division of Epidemiology, the WHO Thailand office, US CDC Thailand office, and also different ministries. Our main partner is Thailand International Cooperation Agency, or we call TIGA, Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Thailand. Most of them are women, like our task force at the Ministry of Public Health as well. We are working together to strengthen the communities and support the position of health volunteers in Thailand, around the border areas, neighboring countries, and other partners in other countries as well, to achieve a goal that we are saving millions of lives by building healthy community together. In summary, concerns about gender ability or stigmatization of women not being able to do as much as men may not totally disappear, but we are making a positive progress. I believe that everyone has their own strengths and has your own platform. I believe that tenderness, attention, and systematic thinking are the characteristics of a woman. Is not a weakness, it's a strong point and important quality to overcome the COVID-19 epidemic with the power of women like us. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Hingjoy. As a woman, I feel so encouraged by you talking about the power of women, the characteristic of us being empathy and working together is a strength. Yeah, thank you. And we learned from the Thailand experiences of celebrating diversity and visibility of women leadership at all levels, not only at frontline, but also at community level, and also at the ministries and the government level. So you have also talked about how to engage women, wives, and families in checking in all measures necessary dealing with the crisis. Thank you so much. These are very concrete examples, and we appreciate that a lot. Now, I have the pleasure to invite our last but not least distinguished speaker, Her Excellency Smati KK Shilatya Teacher, to give us special remarks. And I know Madam Teacher, the Minister of Health, Social Justice, Women and Child, Government of Kerala, India. Her Excellency started her political career as a student activist. Later, she intervened on issues related to women's rights and emancipation. She was elected to the Kerala Legislative Assembly 3 times and was appointed in her current role in 2016. She's a member of the CPI Central Committee and was the State Secretary of All India Democratic Women's Association. Your Excellency, I'm very grateful that you have busy schedule this morning and you have been flexible to join us immediately after your very important meeting. So Your Excellency, we have listened to 3 speakers in the panel, and we are expecting to hear from you too on the questions like, to share your experiences in supporting your country and community in addressing the impact of COVID-19 with a focus on women and girls and why and how to place women's needs and leadership at the center of effective responses and recovery. Also, we would like to hear from you your expectations and insights on how South-South and triangular cooperation can help advance women's voice and decision-making in COVID-19 preparedness, response, and recovery. Your Excellency, the floor is yours.
I'm sorry that I became a little bit late because of a very important meeting with the Chief Minister. First of all, I want to express my thanks to you for organizing this kind of an August gathering and giving me a chance to respond to this webinar. And we are all facing the great threat of the newly formed virus, this coronavirus 2, COVID-19, and the whole world is in panic how to tackle this problem. The virus is progressing and its spreading is going on. And in India also, we are trying our best to tackle this virus and to come out of these problems. I am speaking about my state. Ours is a small state in India, and how we are dealing with this virus. I want to point out something. And from the beginning itself, we started to prepare to contain or to prevent this virus spreading. And we adopted 3 strategies for it. Our early preparedness begin with the 3 strategies, we can say. First of all, we want to minimize the infection. And we started our strategy of trace, quarantine, test, isolate and treat. That was our slogan the very first time itself. When this virus occurred in Wuhan, China, I think it is in January 18 that WHO declared about a potential virus in China. At that time itself, we started our preparedness here because we faced this kind of another threat in 2018. That was from Nipah virus. And at that time, we prepared, we started to prepare to our public health system to tackle that problem. And that was a very good experience to us. So when we heard about this virus, at once we started preparedness here. And we formed our RRT and also rapid response team. And also we started vigorous training and some mock drills. And we, in anticipation of the virus will come tomorrow or day after tomorrow, and we started everything. We opened our control room, etc. And we formed 18 expert groups and give them responsibility, different responsibility to each of them, and give vigorous training also. And when the first flight from Wuhan reached here, our screening team was there in the airport, and we screened well, and we took the positive suspected cases to hospital, and others we sent back to home quarantine, strict home quarantine, and we give advisories how to behave, how to stay in their home, etc. And that was our first strategy that succeeded very well, and we yield good result out of this. Our second strategy is to cut the spreading or block the chain of the spreading. And we started a very good campaign called Break the Chain campaign. And we taught the people how to behave during this season. And we have a very good campaign called SMS. S for soap or sanitizer, M for mask, and the other S for social distancing. And with this acronym, the people took the challenge or this campaign, and they shouldered and they acted well. The non-governmental organizations and some other organizations and people individually, they started this campaign as their own, and that also give us a very good result here. And the other thing is to hunt down the virus and minimize the local spread and minimize the mortality rate. That was our aim. That also, in that also we have a very good result. During the Break the Chain campaign and the trace test, etc., we can minimize the local spread here. That was the very good achievement in Kerala. Today is the 145 days of the pandemic infection pandemic, or the infection started before 145 days, and throughout these 145 days we are trying all these strategies effectively, and almost 650,000 people were kept under surveillance till now. And after tracking down thousands of important cases, and we are looking after them, but yet we have been able to keep our local spread below 11%. That is almost 10% here, local spread. The most of the cases are the imported cases, and the local spread is only below 10%. That is below 11%. That is nearest 10%. That is the very good achievement. And our reproduction rate, R naught rate, is also very good, and it is below 0.25%. And our case fatality rate is 0.65%. And we are maintaining the test positive rate below 2. These are all, I think, when comparing to other part of the world or other part of the other states in India itself, this is the lowest rates. And that is why we are saying that in Kerala, our method yield a very good result. That is the thing here now. And we are now preparing for the future thing, tomorrow's thing, because when the lockdown was lifted, more and more people from outside are coming now. Yesterday, 80,000 people come from outside, from abroad, by flight and by water. They came here, and we are managing all this. We are screening them from the very airports itself, and we are sending them to home quarantine, and we are taking the symptomatic cases to the hospitals. It is a hazardous job, it is a difficult job, but we trained our health workers, and they are there in the airport and the seaport. They are doing that thing, and we are preparing for the future.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Madam Teacher. So thank you for sharing with us a very systematic approach that your country adopted, the strategies. And also it's very important to hear from you that, you know, we have engaged not only the immediate responses, but preparing for the future. We are very happy to hear from you, and also we would like to thank UNDP India, Istanbul Hub, and Gender COP for their support in inviting you as a speaker. We actually learned so much from the social media about the campaign you have been doing in India. It's very simple, straightforward, to the point, and very effective. Thank you very much. And I think many countries can learn from that good experiences too. Thank you very much for being on our panel. Now, colleagues, friends, and participants, we have listened to the 4 distinguished speakers. They are all women leaders from around the world, different regions, to share with us their experiences and their understanding of how South-South cooperation can advance women's empowerment and engagement into this crisis management and in the longer term for development. Now, I would like to maybe share some of the questions from the participants. One of the question is, for the panel, question to Madam Shilaja. Can you speak about women's leadership in COVID response in Kerala? How have women, in addition to yourself, led the response? Do you think that women have a different leadership than that is useful in crisis situation like COVID? And what has been the role of Kudumbashree, the grassroots organization in Kerala? So that is the question for you in particular. Let me also have a related question. Just 1 minute, reading out another question. Okay, yeah, so I think the other question is still being typed, and for now, maybe Madam Teacher, you would like to address that question for us? Thank you. You are muted.
Muted.
Muted, Madam Shilaja.
Can you hear?
Yes, now we can hear you.
Okay. You mentioned about the women leadership, and we think that there is no disparity about gender things in this action, and we are doing our duty, and we all believe in gender equality, and so many women are participating in this tackling of this virus. So many women are there. You mentioned about the Kudumbashree, that is the self-help group we formed here in Kerala. That is also a model, we can say so, and it is for poverty alleviation and social reforms, etc. The aim of the Kudumbashree is social change in the society, and also for empowerment of women to do some economic activities, etc. And 20 groups of women in each and every grassroots level places. We have Kudumbashree unit, 20 women each in each unit, and they are functioning well. We started it in 1990s, and now Kudumbashree is a well-established unit here. And for this coronavirus issue, the Kudumbasri is acting well. Not only Kudumbasri, but the other women organizations under the government, like Women and Children Department, have a very good system here, that creches and Anganwadi. We are saying that Anganwadi for the to look after the children below 5 years, and Anganwadi workers and helpers, they are also women. They are there, and ASHA workers. We have accredited social health workers here called ASHA, and we have more than 26,000 ASHAs, accredited social health workers here, and they are also participating in it. In grassroots level, they are working. The Kudumbasri members, ASHA members, and the Anganwadi members, all are women. And we have in each and every local self-government, we have ward level committee. That committee is responsible to find out whether the people are obeying quarantine or they are jumping or not. Police is also helping, but these women volunteers who are going to each and every houses where people were quarantined and inquiring about them, how is their condition, whether they are feeling anything bad, or whether they are safe, or what is their health condition, etc. Each and every day they are going to the houses and they are calling by mobile phone and they are inquiring about that. In that way, we can say that the women are participating in a very good manner here, and that is the secret of our success, we can say so. The thousands of women are participating in this fight against coronavirus.
Thank you so much, Madam Shilaja. This is a very clear response to the question. Now we have another question here. It's for the panel. I think any panel members, if you would like to address, you can just unmute yourself. I will be able to see. What is the role of government in supporting women movement and women groups in order to tackle the impact of COVID-19 on women and girls in terms of access to basic service such as health, education, etc.? So the support of women's groups. And then another question related more to the panelists have introduced many measures that are very progressive social experiments. What would be your suggestion of how these experiments during the pandemic can be translated into long-term social policies that have sustainable lasting effect? So these two questions so far, and I open the floor to the panel, whoever would like to address the questions.
Definitely, we have a different model here, we can say so. 1957 onwards, we are creating a different model of planning here in Kerala. And now also under the leadership of our brave Chief Minister, Sri Pinarayi Vijayan, we are implementing this people-centered method, democratic method here in Kerala. I mentioned that the socio-economic development in Kerala is so high. Our financial condition is not so good because we are in a developing country, and also our state is not in a not a well-built state, or our revenue income is not too high. We have scarcity of money, etc. here. But our method of planning, that is people-centered and decentralized thing. Power and money we are decentralizing to the poor people. And from 1957 onwards, we have so many reforms here in the society. We adopted so many changes here, especially the Land Reform Act. And the poor people in Kerala, most of the people are able to own a piece of land. Before 1957, we are under the rule of the fundamentalist rule, the feudalist rule was here, and land ownership was, landlords were here, and the poor peasants and poor people are not able to own a piece of land, and always they are evicted from their staying place or from their houses. They are evicted by the landlords, and they have nothing to eat. The poverty is very rampant at that time, 40s and 50s. But after independence, India's independence, and after the formation of language-based states here, we have an election in 1957, and our democratic government came to office. At that time, we in our legislative assembly, we passed so many revolutionary acts, and one is about the land ownership. And now the Keralites have a piece of land. Most of the people have a piece of land, and that is a comfortable state. And also there are some reforms in education field. We started public education, public schools here, government schools for the education of the poor. And also we conducted total literacy campaign, and that also helped to improve the education arena also. Now we have total literacy here. Kerala is a total literate state, and the women literacy is 92% here, and we can say as total literacy. And the health sector also, we have so many reforms, and we started primary health centers in our grassroots level in our village, and people are getting affordable treatment there and quality treatment also. And when this government came to power, when I became the minister, and this government started a mission called, our chief minister declared 4 important missions other than the department works. We started 4 missions, and one is for the reforms in education sector, and the other is for the health sector. The health sector, we are conducting a mission called Ardram mission, and we have a very good project on that. And within that project, we are now improving the public health system. And our slogan is that to make all the public hospitals, the government hospitals, people's friendly and technologically modern, and to reduce the out-of-pocket expenditure of the poor people. We want to give them affordable and quality treatment to the poor people, and we are changing everything, changing the focus also. 1970 onwards in Kerala also, we changed our focus from primary care and prevention to curative parts. But again, we take that focus to the primary care. We are converting our primary health centers to family health centers, and we are starting some initial level diagnosis there itself in primary health centers to early intervention and early detection. And we are starting to fight against the non-communicable disease from the starting stage itself. We are screening the poor people for NCDs, especially for diabetes and also for hypertension and also for cancer. We are screening the poor people for oral cancer and breast cancer and cervical cancer in the primary level itself. And that way we are improving the public health system, and that also helped us very much to tackle this kind of problems. And also we started a campaign called the Arogya Jagrata campaign to fight against the infectious disease. Not only COVID-19, but also dengue fever is here, and H1N1 is here, and all other infectious diseases are coming occasionally. And we are starting our campaign against this infectious disease other than COVID-19. That way, we are preparing ourselves to face any kind of difficulties. And we have a basement here and a democratic way of planning. Democracy doesn't mean the accommodation of Tom or Harry to the office. It means perfect equality in opportunity. Some Greek philosophers say so. And we are also implementing something to get equal opportunity for the poor people. That is the scientific democracy, we can say. We can either say scientific socialism, anything we can say about that planning. And that planning is in Kerala, it is continuing. We are strengthening that people-centered planning, and we have a structure here. I think that is the thing that helps us to fight against this kind of dangerous things when it comes.
Thank you very
I'd
much.
like to answer as well. Yes,
Yes, Dr. Maria. Yes, I would like to invite you the next. Thank you, Dr. Maria. Please. You're muted.
Thank you. No, I would like to say that in Costa Rica, we have strong sanitation institutions and also very strong education institutions. Part of the success in addressing this crisis has been due to having this very strong and institutionalized public sector and having this very resilient institutional tissue. So this has been one of the key areas for us, the response that the public sector has been having. And at the very front line of addressing these issues, of course, many doctors and nurses and us women all over the process and also addressing the more social and economic consequences of the crisis as well. So this is one of the key areas, the importance of and stressing the importance of public governance, stressing the importance of the institutional tissue in the better response of the crisis. Another aspect I would like to say is that to raise is that we have been having also opportunities, for instance, with the Proteger program, which is the cash transfer program that we have been having. It's the first time that we actually have a database to better record people from the informal sector, because we not only decided to give money to people who were in need from the formal sector, but also from the informal sector linked to the most affected economic activities. So it's the first time that we have information from a population where it was very opaque in terms of what was their occupation, how were they getting their money, and also now we're thinking about how can we pass from this very temporary social program in which we inject the resources to another program where we can actually build upon working with these people, right, to bring them to the formal system, to make them have access to credit, have access to social security, and have access to all the more institutional programs that we have. Costa Rica's one of our problems in terms of our economic matrix is that we have a very high index of informality, around 40% of informality. So this is a wonderful opportunity that we have been posing, one of the benefits of the crisis, if I may. And in those terms, we're trying to build upon that information to bring them together and to build packages, policy packages, and better addressing their needs. So this is what we're trying to do, to embed this population into the more institutional channels of social protection, and also giving them other opportunities to become, to be more embedded also in the opportunities of productive and formal systems in order to give them access to better opportunities in terms of training, in terms of access to credit, and in terms of opportunities to deal better with the transformation, fourth revolution, and if possible, as well to do better in terms of adaptation to climate change and other needs that we have been posing as very relevant to our country.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Maria. Again, very insightful micro-level approaches. Yeah, thank you. Now, if other panelists don't have any further input, Dr. Hing Joy, please.
Yeah, I definitely would like to add more.
You are muted.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, very clear.
Okay, I think that the one aspect that we need to concern, this is about the economic aspect, because as we know that, and now like during the COVID-19, the most important thing that occur among us is the crisis and the financial crisis. A lot of people have to get in the position of the unemployed. They don't have work, they don't have to be paid by the daily job. And I think the women and girls, maybe this is more susceptible for the financial crisis. Because in the general, in the women, the education in the women is compared to men. This is likely we have the lower education is compared to the men. That means that we need to think about how we can invest in the term of getting the women in the higher education, And even in the future, even though we have even like it's just not COVID-19, maybe other emerging infectious disease, that means the women can be like we can reduce the crisis from in the economic crisis in the women population. This is one thing that we need and think how we can reduce the economic crisis among the women population. Okay, this is not the solution, but that's just let all of us think about in the future, even though we have to confront within the other emerging infectious disease and impact within our finance.
Thank you very much, Dr. Dingle. So before I summarize, I think there's another quick question to Madam Silaja. So the question is about women nurses from Kerala contribute to health outcomes across the world. How can these healthcare workers play a role in exchanging and learning of best practices in healthcare during COVID-19 with other developing countries?
Yes, as you said, Kerala nurses are well known for their service mind and also their efficiency, etc. I think they are all over the world now. They are in all over the world, and in each and every countries there is a demand for recruitment of nurses from Kerala to other places. Here also nurses are the backbone of our health system, and they are working hard. And we are giving very good training and very good, I think there are courses and that is there's a very good system of training them, and they are now recruited to all of the world, and they are working very well. They are well known, and their service is also well known, and we are ready to give our nursing strength or nurses to other countries if they want their service there, and we will give training to them, and we will recruit nurses from Kerala to other countries also. So many demands are there, and we are working on that. But this time, this is the most difficult time that all are with the stringent activities here. But this time also to Gulf countries, some nurses were recruited to the Gulf countries this time also, and we are ready to supply our nursing capacity to other places of the globe, and we are happy to do that.
Yeah, thank you very much. Okay, yeah, thank you very much. We have a distinguished panel. We have active participation and questions. Now, let me try to just give a brief summary of what we have discussed so far. These are very insightful, informative, and inspiring thoughts that I learned from you. I think we have learned from you some focused measures and programs that have been used in various countries to address the impact of COVID-19. These include your flexible policy tools to subsidize, for example, utility payments, to ensure more social protection and security is in place, flexible regulation to debt repayment to reduce financial risks for women, especially during this kind of crisis, vulnerable groups, including some women. Engaging women in tracking in all measures of dealing with this crisis as health volunteers, as community mobilizers, and as policymakers, and showcasing women's leadership at all levels. We also heard from you some potentially very impactful social experiments that can be translated into long-term policies and have a lasting effect. And these including experiments in areas such as more support to SMEs, renovating public transportation system, improving digital connection and training for entrepreneurship, for skills. Those are very important, and particularly here from Dr. Maria, the STEM program for women and girls, and that's very important for the future. So the question about how to translate those good measures into maybe longer term policies and have a lasting effect. I heard from the panel, several very wise, very important recommendations and learning from the lessons. One is a long-term comprehensive planning approach. That includes multi-sectoral issues, education, health, social protection, economy. But also just focusing on health sector is not just about one crisis, one disease. It is an overall sectoral approach to improve health system. And you touched on also governance issues, equality and opportunity construct democracy. That's, overarching, very important insight. Institutional capacity, the example of strong and resilient sanitation institutions play an important role in this pandemic, and that institutional capacity building dimension is important for all countries. Data as the basis for inclusive programming. I heard from particularly Thailand, the social culture of mobilizing communities, celebrating diversity, engaging families, raise visibility of women champions and examples. So those are also from the cultural aspect to promote a longer term sustaining effect of the good practices that were used in the pandemic. Supporting women groups and community-based organizations is another important dimension. There are potentials that we have to do more. For example, the access rights to women in peace building and sustaining peace. Gender-based violence issue needs to be addressed in particular. So how can South-South cooperation help? I heard from you the first and most important, as demonstrated by this webinar, learning is important, not only from success, but also from mistakes. And advocate for common challenges among the Global South to tackle the hard structural issues together. Let the South-South cooperation be a social laboratory. Yeah, and we also, through the last question to Madam Shilajia, inspired us to think more about the international migration issues. Migration of professional care workers and others. How can they support the SDG outcomes in both the sending countries and the receiving countries? What you mentioned about providing training and more such job opportunities for migrants on both sides are very important. So how can South-South also consider that as an important dimension in our future work? Also, global frameworks I mentioned, the SDGs, the climate action and others, are important to guide our thinking as well in promoting international cooperation. Of course, we heard also from South Sudan, the hard reality. Each country has a different challenge, different situation, and all the South-South cooperation, the solutions need to be tailored and really target to address the hardcore issues on the ground. The challenges are huge. I heard from you all that no country can do it alone, and together we can recover better and stronger. Thank you very much for this distinguished panel. I would also like to particularly, thank the colleagues who have put this together behind the scene. The UN Office for South-South Cooperation has a gender task team. And we count on you as our models and champions. We would like to seek more collaboration with each and every panelist in the future to follow up not just the discussion, but with some concrete ways that we can work together. We have, for example, Shams, Sumita, Muriel, Haihong, Amina, Yejing, and who played an important role in making this event happen. And thank you for Ansi for your support to make everything smooth. We have other members in the task team. I wouldn't name everybody, but all your efforts, deserve that. And thank you very much. We have more webinars to come, and I welcome everybody to check in that we have a city-to-city cooperation webinar on 30th June. We have a Digital with Purpose webinar on 8th of July. We have a webinar on regional and coordinating organizations in the Global South. All these are topics important in addressing COVID-19, and that one is on 15th July. Check out our South-South Galaxy platform, and you will have more information there. Again, thank you all to the panelists and to the participants. We learned a lot, and we hope to keep the dialogue going. Thank you very much. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Okay, Shams and Nancy, thank you.
You're most welcome, Grace. Congratulations.
It was very smooth. Thank you.
Yes, it was very smooth. Thank you for everybody. Thank you for the great moderation, Grace, as always.
Thank you. You are the director. I'm just the actor.
No, you're the director.
Cameraman. Make sure. All the scene management. Great.
Bye-bye.
Okay, thank you, colleagues.
Take care.
Have a nice
Bye.
day.
Bye.
Bye.